The views and opinions expressed here are those of the interviewees and do not reflect the views of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. Any content provided by contributors is of their own opinion and is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organisation, company, individual, anyone or anything. These recollections are for entertainment purposes only and offer a historical window into Omagh's past.
I'm going back to Omagh to walk her streets again. I'll tip my hat to all the girls, shake hands with all my friends. I'll climb aboard the silver bird that flies across the foam. I'm on my way to Omagh in the county of Tyrone.
A very good evening to you. If you've just joined us, you're listening to Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio with myself, Don McGurgan, and my co-presenter, Mr. Declan Ford.
Yes, and we're working in collaboration with the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council to help celebrate the Omagh Music Festival, which runs from Thursday the 29th of September until Sunday the 2nd of October.
And this week's programme will be presented by Paddy Hunter, a well-known broadcaster in town, and he talks to an even better-known Omagh personality, Shay Turbett.
Oh, lovely. And Shay talks about his life, his interests, growing up in Omagh, and all things Omagh. So, Excellent. An interesting podcast. Take it away, Paddy and Shay.
Shay, great to talk to you. And we're here looking out in the Stool River, basically in the footprint of where the town hall was. And that's where you maybe started your musical career, well, certainly your career on stage anyway.
That's right, Paddy. Just before we continue, I want to thank you for involving me in this and asking me all about the history of, music and the start of music with myself. Primary school at that time was the Christian Brothers in Omagh, where we went from Mother Oliver's. You went to, well, that actually was the very, very start of a lot of musical careers with a lot of showband people from the town here. The Triangle or the Tambourine and Mother Oliver's band.
Right.
That was when you were very, very young. And then you went you done a year there, and you went then to the Christian Brothers Primary School, which was the old community centre was or is there now. And the pantomimes was a big thing in the 50s then. And with us being young on that, and we were involved, they took so many out of each class to be doing a wee part, children's things at the start. So there was four of us. There was Eamon Campbell and Vincent Young and myself, and the late Paddy Gormley was the adult. He was the big cat. After we were mice. We scurried across the stage, and then you had to go home at the interval then. You know what I mean? You weren't allowed to stay on.
That was your first taste?
That was my first taste of the great famous town hall that many's a famous person that treaded on it, you know. So that was the very, very...
But there was a connection right away with the music though in your own family, and obviously your father was involved in the orchestra and those pantomimes.
My uncle Brian would have been a kind of a musical director with it, and then my father would have played the drums and different special effects and that, you know. And it was more of a violence and things like that, you know, the late Agnes Slevin and Sue Hunt and all that. And they at that was the pantomimes that I was involved in, and that, you know. And then after that, then you sort of had that taste, you know, following. You didn't know, but at that time, Paddy, you see, music was starting to grow in Omagh. The bands were starting to come. You had the older show band, or older show bands like the Clipper or the Melodious. So that kind of, you were diverted to that there. I want to have this life, sort of born in it, you know. And at that time, I'd been a cub and gone round the like of the Clippers or again the Melodies, and a few bands from Derry and a few from Galway would have come to the Star Ballroom, and I would have been round there. I was allowed round there. Mightn't have told them all the time I was round there, but to carry on the cases of these bands, and you would have sat and you would have heard them. At that time, a lot of these bands, they played from 9 o'clock till late, but they always warmed up with a few Dixieland tunes, and I liked this music, the Dixieland, and I would have, then after 2 or 3 numbers, they knew it had sat listening to it. Then you sort of had to get out then. For that time, a lot of ones started to come in then, Paddy, you know. And
that said, your own family was heavily involved in St. Eugene's band, though. That's the key element to it, isn't it?
The next step then, Paddy. Once you were, you see, there was my father and Shay Turbett was in the band. And as I used to say, instead of a babysitter in our house in Gallows Hill, I went down with my father. And at that time you were 8, 9, and I automatically lifted a tambourine.
Yeah.
Again, my uncle Brian was involved in it, and I was allowed to keep time in the tambourine. And then I sort of pushed myself. There was nobody such thing, oh, you can join the band. That was down the line now.
Yeah.
And eventually then, got cheeky then when I was fit. The late Gus Hamilton was a great drummer with the band. And Gus then, he says, I want you to move to play the cymbals in different numbers. Now, they were very, very heavy now.
Yeah.
And I would have played the cymbals and marches and things like that.
The band would have marched at this time?
But I wasn't. Oh, the band, they would have practiced Sunday, and it was Sunday after last Mass, as they would say. And then I think it was a Wednesday night, that was a big practice.
And where would those practice?
Down in the old Labour Hall,
Yeah,
which is where the Kelvin...
Yeah, way in.
The way,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where, that was the... But I remember prior to that, Paddy, St. Patrick's Hall, up beside the chapel,
Yeah.
I remember carrying chairs and things like that. I was always involved with being the eldest of the Turbett family with, and St. Bridget's Terrace, and you would have been out with my father, you know, should it be football or that, but it was more in the music and that there. And I always sort of, Paddy, there was no such thing as me joining St. Eugene's band. I was part of St. Eugene's band, brought it automatically, you know what I mean? It was just where you went. And then going back then to the Labour Hall, where the band was, you had the like of Ray and Pat and Leo and the late John McCrumish, Aidan McCallion, Frankie McBride, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this was way above me at this stage. These boys were all a few years older than me, but they were progressing. Again, going back, you had the Melodies, they were making big inroads in the 50s and the 60s. Then the other bands was following suit. And then you had the like of Ray and them boys that was brass players.
Yeah.
They were progressing very, very quick. And this is where I really got the bug then, you know, when I seen these boys. This is the line that I want to go down here.
Yeah, to take you back though, you mentioned the Melody Aces.
Yes.
Gene, of course, the late Gene was heavily involved from day one.
Again, Paddy and Gallows Hill, I would have carried Gene's case down. He would have come back to the home house up there with living on the other side of the town. And when they were going away, and you would have put the case under their big wagon at the time. And again, Paddy, that was just, I want this. And the like of the platters or platter men at that time too were, and the polka dots, you know, were starting to really go. And I thought, this is
all from one end of the town, of course.
All, Paddy, all come out of St. Eugene's band now.
Yeah.
Because that's where the brass players, every town in Ireland, or when I say every town, a lot of towns in Ireland and the Free State had brass and reed bands, and that's where all the top bands all just come out of, you know, grew out of there. The brass set, no matter where in Ireland you go back, the brass in them days they were heavily involved with brass and reed bands in the towns or community of that area, you know.
You opted then after, obviously you saw Gene and you saw all our bands in the town, you decided, I'm going to go for this.
Yes. And very, very much then, I moved on a step until a wee group with Damien Given and Aidan McPeak. And we would have played at hops. The more I wasn't playing, I was on the trumpet, but I was drumming actually, Paddy.
Yeah.
And
You'd also learned the trumpet at this stage too, though.
I was starting to learn, but not enough to take me out at this stage out to play at a hop. It wasn't sort of fashionable down in St Mary's Hall. And I'll give you a laugh. I used to go into confessions to Father Clerkin. It wasn't for confessions. The people thought I was a very holy boy. Could we have St Mary's Hall next Friday, Father? We're having a wee
And
hop.
for those who don't know, St Mary's Hall's under the chapel.
It's under the chapel, Paddy, that's correct. And there, and the like of Damien and myself and that. And then we progressed, then we were getting big. we played then in the Foresters Hall down onto the stage. There was a place down, I think it was a changing room or a cafe or something at that time. And then, Paddy, I started to get, the trumpet then started the cornet it was at that time in the band. I started to get sort of braver. I'm starting to pick up this thing here and starting to play this. And then I joined Paddy Gormley and the Mark V. They were a relief band. And when I say a relief band, they would have done a lot of stuff in the Royal Arms a few years later. But they would have done Orange Halls and different things there, and wee halls out round the Tyrone and that. And there was late nights and that, and you were
working at the time as well?
I was at school.
Right.
And then it doesn't matter at school. There's two people, myself and the late great Tommy Moore was one of the best drummers. That's all Tommy and me wanted was music. We were laughed at school, because music. But little did the people know that down the line things would sort of open up for us,
Yeah.
And I never bothered about anything else, books, Paddy, to be just music. And after that, Paddy Gormley, I got a great learning looking back with Paddy Gormley.
Who was all in the band?
There was the late Joe Hill. Gus Hamilton would have drummed. Paddy was a singer. And then there was a brother of Shay Hutchison's in the later year, Brenton Hutchison, a very, very good singer. But and a Bobby Collins, I think was the name of the fellow that was a guitar player. I was still very young, I had to put on long trousers and that when we were going away to places and that. And now the dances and them things and them halls, Paddy, were very, very long. And you used to get tea and that afterwards. So that had to come to an end then. And I sort of pulled back a wee bit from that. I left school, then at 15, I was really starting to go then. Even though I played bigger dances with the Mark V and that, I was outside the fort. At Lent, you see, Paddy, in the early 60s, the bands, there was no dancing in Ireland here. Some halls did, but the bands all, as the man says, emigrated near enough to England, done their time over there, for it was 6 weeks at least anyway. Yeah. But I went over, there was a dance in the Foresters one night, and I happened to go over, and I met a great friend of mine from Gallows Hill who was at school with Sean Drum. And Sean, and little did I know it was the Ventures from Monaghan was playing in the Foresters, and Sean says, I was chatting to Bill Rice, who he worked with, and he says, they're looking about a trumpet player. And he says, God, I says, well, Sean, if you don't mind, will you mention it to him? Aye. And about 2 nights later, this car pulled up at our house in Gallows Hill with Bill Rice and one of the senior members of the Ventures, and asked me would I come till a practice in Monaghan. And I thought at this stage, Monaghan, that's a fair scoot away. But a night or two later, I went away to Monaghan with my trumpet under my arm, and sang a few songs, and played a few songs with the band. And again, it was Lent, and they were in the Gap Ballroom, which they kept the dances going. You see, the like of the Carrickmores and them halls shut down, with it being a parochial hall, Paddy, and the like of the Gap or the Foresters and that kept going. But the Gap ballroom, I started with Adventures, and I was amazed, Paddy, with the crowd. And there, you started at 9, half 9, and you flailed on then like to 1 o'clock maybe, and that was that then, Paddy. By this stage now, I was a storeman in John McGill's garage, and the dates was a Friday night and a Saturday night, and even Dublin. I was burning the candle at both ends, Paddy, and I thought, this, and I said to my mum and dad, says, I can't, well, if that's the road you want to go down, you go down it.
I suppose the fact was, say, that music was already in the house with Gene, and the family knew.
Very much. You see, again, in Gallows Hill, you had all them boys practising, and the late Aidan McCallion, I have to add, Aidan lived 3 doors from me, and Aidan at that stage, way back again, Paddy, I'm going back a bit there, Aidan played with a Mayo band by the name of Jack Gruan, and Aidan, I remember Aidan playing and practising in the garden. There was nowhere in Gallows Hill that you didn't go, that you didn't hear a member of St Eugene's band practising or playing. All right, there was some of them weren't in the show bands or didn't go down that way, but Lord God, Paddy, whatever was about Gallows Hill and St Eugene's band, it was music, all the time, the time.
So was the Ventures then, how long did that experiment, wasn't an experiment, it was probably started as an experiment, but...
My first professional date with a band, I'll never forget it, was in the Sports Centre in Cavan. And that really was, I was taken out of the Tyrones or Fermanagh, and that I was into a different world then, into Cavan. And then the dates then, Paddy started coming then with the band. And it was getting 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, and we were on the crest of a wave then, as you would say. And now there's a lot of dates there that, you know what I mean, were far away and that, but then as we went on then, the management become tighter, and we used to say, good God, keep the dates, you know, if we were going down the country, keep them down there. Now the like of the Midlands and the west of Ireland, we were lucky at that time. We always stayed about the Longford Arms Hotel in Longford, one of Reynolds', and the Reynolds brothers, that's Albert Reynolds and his brother, they had all these ballrooms, and they all finished in land, like Maryland and Fairyland and all these kind of names. But we would have stayed, and indeed, it will remind you the exact same as the Royal Arms, the Longford Arms, because it was that kind of an hotel, and they had a dance on a Thursday night, and you could have been playing there, and then you worked your way around, you know, you'd have been in the Sea Point in Galway, you were in Birr, and you went another maybe hour away. At that time of the roads on hour, like was a right bit, and you moved about, and then you come back, and then on the Sunday night you could have been in King's Court in Cavan, or Granard in Longford. And that's how we were very, very lucky then. Then when we went down, as we used to say, down to Africa, and from Kilkenny on, you sort of stayed down there. And then we used to stay in a great hotel in Waterford, the Ardree Hotel. It overlooked the whole town of Waterford, and again, the Royal Showband, and that you kept your head down there, like it was royalty down there.
You were all over the country. It wasn't a nice lifestyle. You mentioned the roads there. Obviously, it was tough. The roads were bad. What about the food? What about the hospitality?
I'll come back. The roads, Paddy, was one thing. You'd have been breaking more springs in the wagon, but anyway, that's another. Food, you're asking? Food. I laughed some time back. Somebody says to me, like a man, he says, God, it must have been great travelling and that. He says, with all the Chippies or McDonald's and this kind of a thing. And I looked at him and I says, McDonald's? Says, I, for God's sake, whatever, Monaghan or wherever you left, says, you got a 2 or 3 hour journey. There was no such McDonald's or things. And then when you went there, Like, let's take you this summer now. Like, I mean, the carnivals, we're playing the carnival. You went down to a house. There's always a house, a famous house. You got a meal.
Yes.
And that meal from Easter Sunday to maybe the last Sunday in September, carnivals, you got what we used to call in the band a honeymoon salad. You turned over, it was let us alone. And says I, when you look closely at that lettuce could have been moving across the plate with something underneath it. Ham, spam, tomato. That went on, Paddy.
That was all the bands. It didn't matter Royal or whatever.
It was all the bands. Very seldom you got, and that's it, you went to an hotel, and even the hotels in them times, Paddy, they were few and far between too, you know what I mean? Like, in a town and that, like, you would have, but as regards, there wasn't a band man had a bad stomach. And God knows, Paddy, the food, like, there was nowhere chocolate, and then after...
No garages, obviously, either.
No garages.
How did that work for fuel then?
Well, we used to, some of the fellas in Monaghan, we had jerry cans, but again, we weren't that way. We were all right. You had to do a long journey at different times. A great friend of ours, his brother played saxophone and clarinet and piano in the band. Petey MacDonald, his brother Frankie MacDonald, out of the Drifters. It'd be the father of Keith and Lorraine and them younger ones now. We used to, in Athlone, they lived in Athlone. We used to have our cans filled and left them behind Frankie's house. And if we were coming up, you filled the wagon then up with fuel then. That's what you did. And you took them cans with you, or you might have left them at Frankie's house there for again going down, you got them filled up by that, you know, and that's how you done. But another thing, after a carnival, you could have got another great feed, was a parish, what we used to say, a parish bun and a wee bottle of milk, or a pint of milk, or indeed, Paddy, coming home, you would have seen a milkman in the town, in a small town. You would have went over and you would have said, take a couple of bottles with you there. You'd have drank the milk. That was Paddy food. No.
And before I move on, and obviously Omagh was big for carnivals. Did you ever do Omagh?
We done in the later years. We done a carnival in I think it was in the showgrounds. In fact, there's a poster. I seen a poster no time ago up on some of them Showband pages and the internet thing, and I stood back and I looked at it and looked at it again. There was the Buckaroos, there was the Plattermen. I think the Plattermen were playing in the Royal Arms as part of it, the carnival. I think it was Derek Mahaffey and the Ventures, and I thought there was 4 bands from Omagh supplying entertainment in the town of Omagh. Do you know what I mean? That was wonderful to see, like, you know.
But you also went to the carnivals in Omagh, I'm sure, as well, did you?
Away in the younger times, Paddy, I would have went, but then when the band was all going, I never got to dance, you know, Paddy. Very, very few that you were dancing, that you would have went to the Royal Arms, not because the arms would have been on when you'd have been playing, and every band man was the same. You know, Monday night was a known night for a night off and that, but that was...
But even in later years, that would have been the case too, because any of us that worked in the bands, even in the late 80s and 90s, Monday night was the night that you got out.
Monday night, but then there was no dancers. And that was the last place you were wanting to go to dance, believe you me.
It's amazing to look back at the success that the band from Monaghan with Omagh people had. But then there was the Omagh bands, of course, as well, doing exactly the same.
It was great. You would have met up with, you see, again, going back, you had the Claxon with Pio and Ben Sweeney and fellas like that, you know. And then again, coming back to Omagh, you had the swing airs with Jimmy O'Neill. Again, half the brass, like all, you were nobody in the town if you didn't come through Jimmy O'Neill's swing airs. And another band that was very, very popular was Jim McKenna and the Comets. Jim McKenna, John McCrumley would have played. Everybody sort of, but he would have got his brass players, a lot of them too, from Derry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And poor Jim would have went to Derry and got them even to come up here. Jim was a great promoter and a great band man. He played the piano, and a great man that was always brought the town of Omagh.
Yeah, and there was a lot of characters like that.
There was.
And obviously the music was big in the town. We talked about the likes of the Plattermen, of course, and what Ray and the boys done and all those bands. But from your own point of view then, what happened to Ventures trip then?
We 8 years, Paddy, then.
8 years?
8 years, I was 8 years with them.
Did you travel up and down to Monaghan, or did you stay in Monaghan?
No, I lived in Monaghan for 3 years, Paddy.
Right.
I lived but Bill Rice, with him being married and things like that. I'm not saying, you know what I mean, you had to come home, but he would have come home. I had no car at the time.
Yeah.
I was in digs in Monaghan, actually in digs in the Tony and Colin Hughes' house, and the parents, they looked after me like one of their own and that, you know. And but again, Paddy, it was running up to 5 and 6 nights a week. It was great to come home because Monaghan was, you were an hour in your bed before the like of Bill got home to Loma and things like that. But then as bigger dates started to come, I got a car then, and between Bill and me shared it to go up. The wagon was kept. Then another stage. Then we moved. We got a new bus from Cars in Newry, and of course it was a northern bus, and it was handed to us two boys in Omagh to look after it. And we used that, and it got then, instead of a bus, the boys then said we're travelling cars, but who was going to have this other plane, the other bus, the bus that we got with airplane seats and everything that was put until it done it all specially. Nobody wanted to travel on it then. They all got cars, and it was left lying there. We sold it to some band in Cavan. We got a van then, and we had a lad from Monaghan that drove it, and away you went then.
It's different times.
It was different. I didn't like that, Paddy, because you were like when you were together in the wagon, you learned songs, you know, and you were just as it started to spread out, you know, individually. There wasn't that same, you know, closeness then, you know.
Yeah. You opted to come back then, did you, Omagh?
I come back and stayed or just worked from Omagh then.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, Paddy, 73 was starting to. The band went to Canada, which I sort of. No, I was married at the time. Nothing to do with that, but I thought this is coming to an end. This here, I would need to start looking about here.
Did you play any music though? Were you remained with the Ventures all the time? Did you?
No,
from Showband point of view.
I finished at 73 with the Ventures, and they went to Canada.
Yeah.
Half the band went to Canada, and another half, or two or three of them says, enough's enough.
Yeah.
They had businesses at this stage in Monaghan, a furniture business, so they weren't going to go away. Yeah. And then the next thing, I wanted to get a job, and lucky enough, I got a nursing assistant's job in the Fermanagh Hospital, involved with, believe it or not, entertainment out there. I fell on my feet, and I was fit to bring in the like of Dominic. Ray would have come in and played the piano with different dances for me, and different fellas that I knew. Philomena would have come in and sang at different functions that I was holding and that, you know. And the entertainment kept going through my work for all them years that I worked in the Fermanagh.
Did you play professionally again? No.
No, not well. What I did then, I met up with a great friend of mine, and our great friends was John Hutchison and Eamon Donnelly, and we played. We called ourselves Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of dinner dances and stuff. And the funny thing about it, you had Hutchison singing a lot of his dad's stuff, and I was playing the trumpet behind him. And people are, believe it or not, we didn't set out, you were getting a kind of a melodious sound, because we were doing a bit of Dixieland, and John was doing his father's stuff, and I was playing in behind him and that. And you had that going through it, so it always waved through it. And then we sort of just got tired after years of that. As you get older, Paddy, you just move away, and that's a sort of a...
From your own point of view, though, you did play with the Melody Aces, did you, in later years?
A few. I remember doing a night, Gene had dental problems with his teeth, which was a big thing with brass players.
Yes, I understand that,
the
yeah.
teeth, and he had a few teeth out, and I stood in rather with them in Gorchin, and on different wee occasions stood in and played, and it was another great ground, you know what I mean, to do that. And to say I've stood on the stage with these boys, but then another great honour, Paddy, that I got, that I'll never forget. The Plattermen were a big band about the Royal Arms. Now, the close of the Royal Arms, Paddy, was coming, and of course it was a Plattermen reunion.
Yeah.
And Ray and Pat, that's Pat Chesters,
Yeah.
and Leo,
Yeah.
they never forgot the Hill, they never forgot St. Eugene's band. Shay, will you play trumpet? And it was the greatest, I have to honestly say, Paddy, it was one of the greatest honours for me to share the stage with fellas that you looked at when you were growing up and that, you know.
Aye.
And I'm not making them out old men
No,
now,
I know
like,
what
you know what I mean,
No,
at
no,
that
I know
stage.
where you're
But to
coming
play
from, yeah.
trumpet with the Plattermen, Ray played piano, and Artie McGlynn was playing guitar, not on that night, but previous to that, and calling that. It was a wonderful night, Paddy.
Yeah.
To say that I shared the close of the Royal Arms and to be playing with the Plattermen, oh boy, it was great, you know.
Brings us really full circle to now this event, that you're going to be playing Plattermen
yes.
songs. You're looking forward to that?
Very, very much so. Now Ray has done the arrangements and the Plattermen.
Probably, to cut across you, there's probably no better arranger in this country, or
Lord.
maybe in Europe.
One of the greatest. You see, a lot of people, Paddy, now musicians or younger ones that's coming on. Ray Moore. I used to I had everything going for me. I had Gene to look upon. Gene was a great Dixieland player and things like that. And Ray done the arrangements and done all the brass arrangements for the plan. Ray Moore was one of the greatest trumpet players. And if they had been in Dublin or Belfast, Ray Moore, they would have a statue to him.
Yeah.
I'm not going overboard here now.
No, I
you
know what you
about
mean,
Ray.
no, I
But
appreciate
Ray
that, yeah.
Moore, I have stuff for Ray playing trumpet, session work and everything. Nobody knows the talent of that man. And Ray Moore, which I couldn't do, Ray would have been hitting notes way up in the high scale, no bother to him whatsoever. And the funny thing is, he expects me to do that.
Funny enough, when you mentioned the session work, he was telling me recently that he worked with Barry Devlin and Horslips, that album, you know.
He's played in all that.
Unreal.
You know? And he's played in
well kept secret from people
well
here.
kept.
Yeah.
If you were in Aladdin's cave, as I call it, Ray's studio, you got the CD backing tracks and you'd see Ray Moore trumpet, Ray Moore of all the heads, and they're just there. He just takes it on his thing and that.
So he does. There's no doubt about that. There, this event celebrating Omagh Showbands is very important to the community.
Yes.
And I'm going to say it's about time, isn't it?
It is about time, Paddy. Again, if this was in Derry or somewhere, this would be the biggest thing ever. We have it in Omagh, but Omagh's a very modest or shy kind of a place. Musicians are strange, you know. They just don't want that limelight, you know, because what are we? We're no better than a tradesman, but the amount of money that they've brought around the whole country and that, you know, and it all keeps going back, Paddy, full circle to St. Eugene's band.
Yeah.
And again, I hope I'm not jumping in. Again, Paddy, the band, has been great to the town.
And you're still playing.
I'm still, and don't you ask me how many years now, Paddy, because it's a hell of a long time. And Ray would have said to me no time ago, and it's very hard to take Ray serious at times, you know. But he was a time after that hit me. That is true. Shay, you're still playing in the band. There's not too many Showband men playing, you know, and that hit me, Paddy, at the time, and I thought, or after, you know, that is true. It's hard work, Paddy. You have to, I would practice or every half an hour every day to keep the lip in it and to keep a standard. And like when you're involved in this here, you have a standard in St. Eugene's band, by all means. Mike Reynolds is the leader of the band at the present time, and he requires a top standard. And then to move on, and then with like a Ray and the Platterman music and things like that, you would need to be a top player at that kind of stuff, believe you me.
But when you listen back to them, and you listen back to, say, the stuff from 1972, Old Devil Wine, that album, the Tour of Pearl stuff and all that there, it's unreal, isn't it?
All real, all played by them boys there.
Yeah, and
all
I don't
played.
think people realise that.
No, you see, they talk about session people and things like that, you know. Them boys there, Paddy, if you put on a Blood, Sweat and Tears of Chicago, them big American university bands, and put on the Platterman, the Platterman had a sound, they had a sound that was, nobody in Ireland could take off. They tried it, but it never, because you had them boys, they grew up together, which was a big thing in the town here. Growing up together and coming through the school of music, if you want to call it, Eugene's band, that there from the very start, and it's...
Will we ever see the likes of the show bands again?
No, Paddy, no. Nobody's going to learn now. You know, we're still trying to recruit in St. Eugene's band. They'll come in, you have a couple of people coming in, they automatically want to see what that lady's playing or that man's playing or what I'm playing, the trumpet. They sort of think that well, you know, I'll learn this quick. I'm still, every time I lift the trumpet, Paddy, I'm still learning. You know, that is really true. But no, it's a great honour to be a member of St. Eugene's band, and a great honour to be asked to take part on behalf of all the musicians of Omagh. Not irrespective of whether they played in St. Eugene's band, but just the whole of Omagh, because they put Omagh on the world map.
Omagh was a hotbed of the show bands.
A hotbed, by all means. A hotbed, and still you could put many a show band out of Omagh, like, you know, with the fellas there, you know, there's some great musicians about Omagh, Paddy. All right, they mightn't be brass players. If there's a brass player out there, I want to know, believe you me. The band room in the Tamler Road is awaiting you, you know.
One final point, obviously, the show bands was huge, and it was good to you on a personal level?
Very good to me, Paddy. Very good to me, and looking back around the town, it has been good for Omagh too. It has put Omagh, like, I mean, if you go anywhere and you talk about brass, they'll always talk. The Polka Dots had great brass. All Omagh bands, and the Derrick and the Sounds, you had Damien Gibbon, having myself and Seamus McGuigan started off together in St. Eugene's band, young lads.
You know, the one thing I'll say to you is that the bands were good to this area, and it is only right now that they are marked in some way, and this could be the start of something very big, couldn't it?
It certainly should be, you know, Paddy, because it's coming to an end of that era of the show bands, you know what I mean? Well, the bandsmen, or as in the show band chat of years ago, band heads will not be about. And now's a lovely time now. And another a man that kept the bands, always talked on his radio show, was the late P.O. McCann. Never forgot Omagh for the brass, no matter where. And Brian Call, never went anywhere. Of course, he would have the boys backing him, like, you know what I mean, in their earlier days and that. Never forgot their town of Omagh and Derrick. You know, never forgot Omagh.
The one thing does jump out at me though. Now you've been around the halls around Ireland. You know, the Plattermen were doing brain stuff, obviously, and then all of a sudden they were doing the big sound. What do you think of that?
I thought they were the Plattermen were way ahead of their time, if you know what I mean. It was great when we used to play the Arcadia in Cork and Jetland, I think he called it, in Limerick. But would have heard my voice, you know, I mean, from the north and that, the first thing that they would have said, the Plattermen, you know, I'm not being biased or taking that out just because the boys are involved with the Plattermen and that, but there was no other band, and that's it was an orchestra way back away in the 50s or something, but they weren't even doing that sort of stuff. The boys had that American college sound off to the T through the arrangements of Ray.
What the Ventures do? What was the stock trade of them now?
Our music ability. Again, you had Bill Rice and country. You had Tony Hughes doing ballads. You had Colin Hughes doing the rock and roll. And I would have done a sort of a Dubliners, that kind of folky stuff, you know what I mean? And then there again, they didn't let me sing, you see, because there's too many singers and things like that, you know what I mean? But I would have got a number and I would have sang it there and then, because you always use a lot of the brass, Paddy. You know, again, the brass was used a lot on it.
Shay, it's been a pleasure talking to you about music and Omagh, but it would be remiss me not to mention Gene and his influence in the music scene locally. You know, I know him in later years, but you know, as a character, as a person, you just loved music.
Gene was one of the, again, when they heard of my name being Turbett, the first thing that they would have said to Gene was one of the best announcers.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, I came out of the University of Gallows Hill, you know what I mean? But no, and a great trumpet player, a great man, all them bands were all gentlemen. You know, if you asked them, you know, anything you wanted to know, but Gene, a great honour that I have, after Gene passed away, his family, I'd be round regular at Gene's house, and they took me down to the room, a couple of them, Paul and Maria, and Gene's wife, Gene. There's Gene's trumpet. And you know, Paddy, I didn't hear what they said. So I said, what did you say? Wanted to have Dad's trumpet. And I'm playing that trumpet at this very, very time, Paddy. And to be honest with you, you get very emotional when you look back and you say, if you could tell stories, you could still. And to look back at videos that was done of the melodies down through the years, and to see that trumpet, that I'm supposed to have that standard of playing, but then I have. I have to have when I left that there, like, you know.
The melodies lives on.
The melodies lives on in the trumpet.
'Tis many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.